Good evening and welcome to another episode of the Wildcard Devy Show, Fantasy Wildcard Devy Show. I am one of your hosts, Jack, and you can catch me on X at JackCDCTT. But the much more interesting side of this duo is Phil at Posh Plays FF on X. How are you doing, Phil?
Yeah, I'm really well, mate. Is it really 2 weeks since we last sat and talked for? Because it feels like a lifetime ago. I can't wait to get into it. I've missed you, mate.
It is so good to see you. It is so good to be chatting ball. And we are going to be breaking down our mock draft that we did in our last episode, touching on some trends, touching on some of our strategy, and maybe some things that we'd like to see from certain players that have slid down that mock draft board to boost themselves back up. But we are going to start. We do have a little bit of news, and it is very breaking as we record here at 8:45 on Wednesday evening. The news has broken that Micah Hudson is no longer part of the Texas A&M program, and he intends to enter the transfer portal again. Now, that is basically all the information we have, and there are certainly some rumors and not necessarily negative ones about Micah Hudson and the time he took stepping away from Texas A&M. But your thoughts on this one, Phil, for the player and for Devy?
Yeah. So firstly, it pretty much kind of happened or came to light in January, not long after he actually joined Texas A&M. Shrouded in mystery somewhat. After moving from Texas Tech, where we know he perhaps didn't have the start many in Devy circles expected. And this was supposed to be wheels up. It was supposed to be the move to bigger and better things. Obviously, it broke this evening. Mike Elko kind of confirmed that he is away from the team and that he would be looking to re-enter the transfer portal. But you're right, that's all we know. So, of course, social media's gone into overdrive. Aggies fans are very quick to say it's because he couldn't learn the playbook, it's because he couldn't learn the offense. But look, that's complete speculation, and I'm sure just angry, bitter fandom. Um, and yeah, look, it's not good, obviously, in terms of his projection moving forward. We see these things that once a player moves once, okay, utilize the ball, but two, three times in quick succession, shrouded in that kind of mystery, it doesn't look great for their long term projection. However, when you are as talented as Micah Hudson, if you're watching this right now this evening, there will probably be some very nervous earners. And I wonder, ahead of draft season, if you could trade away a mid round pick and an owner potentially be happy to be rid of him. I think it's a great buy low opportunity for a kid who has got outrageous potential. And yeah, I will be sending out some offers after the show, I feel.
Yeah, I think that it's that raw traits discussion again, isn't it? We know Micah Hudson has the potential and the physical ability to be a superstar in college and therefore hopefully in the NFL as well. What I would be doing, what I am thinking of doing as a Micah Hudson owner is holding and holding real tight. I'm not going to be listening to those offers that Phil is preparing to send me right now. But I'm also on that buy window if I don't have him. And like you say, it's the perfect opportunity to take advantage of rookie fever. And we haven't really spoken about this because we've not had a good example of what we could do here. But this is a really good opportunity to trade some of those players that would probably be second round NFL rookie draft picks right now. So I'm thinking some of those running backs that aren't in the top tier that you desperately want to keep hold of. So we're not talking about Amarian Hampton or obviously Ashton Junty or Trevion Henderson, but someone. Can you package up Jordan James because he was a very physical, productive runner at Oregon? Package him up with something else. Would you even go as far as trading someone like Quinton Judkins for Micah Hudson? There's that second tier of running back is what I'm going to be looking to trade to try and acquire Micah Hudson, which 5 months ago you'd have been laughed out the door with, but right now is definitely an opportunity.
Again, it's really funny because our good friend Matt the Weatherman has released a piece for DLF this evening looking at Ayamano. And he, to me, I have several shares of the player. I like him as a player. I liked him as a college wide receiver. I think he will be a steady Eddie as a pro. I don't think he's going to be, he's not going to take the top off your wide receiver charts for fantasy, but he's going to be a good pro, and he's going to, ultimately he's landing in the league this year, likely the day two pick. Um, and he seems again like the perfect kind of guy to flip and cash out on. And definitely take a risk on a player with the absolute upside of a Michael Hudson.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, a bit of a breakdown there of what it means for the player, which is basically we don't know, and we hope for more. And for Devy, this is your buy window for Micah Hudson, and I don't think it's outrageously expensive buy window either. So to the main meat of our menu this evening. And that is to break down our 2025 mock draft. And I have spruced up what we tried to present last week and turned it into a Google slide so that we can hopefully guarantee that it is on your screens to view if you are watching us on YouTube or on X. If you are listening on podcast form, we will make sure we run through this board as well while we chat through what happened. So we are going to focus on a few key aspects. We're going to chat firstly about the 2027 receiver class, because we started this draft at the 101 with Jeremiah Smith, the wide receiver from Ohio State, Ryan Williams at the 102, the wide receiver from Alabama. And you skip on down to later in the first round, you also saw TJ Moore, Cam Coleman, and Bryant Wesco all go in the first round of our mock draft. Following that up in the second round, you got Bryant Wesco and Nick Marsh, and then the man we've just spoken about, Micah Hudson, followed that up in the third round. So what's that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 receivers in the first round, 2 in the second round, and 1 in the third round. That's a bounty of receivers from one class, right?
Absolutely. And it just goes to show that there is an abundance of talent to be had. And I think looking at this right now, there are names amongst that the biggest and most high profile recruits would have been drafted last year by your 5-star clout chasers, people who draft based on the high school rankings and don't really look a great deal more into it. But there's also guys that are going to fall in through the cracks. Like if you had an early first in a supplemental draft this year, Bryant Wesco looks like he's going to be a great pickup for you. Again, Nick Marsh, Ryan Winger, 50-50 split. The landing spot at Texas might have got him drafted last year as an incoming rookie. But there's still some of these guys to be taken as well. What it tells us is this class is going to be good. The fact that they have knocked some of those 2026 players down the board speaks volumes. And we're really, really looking now for some of these guys to take off and and kind of propel themselves further up those boards. It's looking really, really promising.
Yeah, it is. I think the testament here to how strong this class is that these weren't all my picks. That actually Phil, these guys have bumped down some of those running backs that more traditionally you would be all over.
Yeah, certainly, and rightly so. And rightly so, because they're proving, they proved as freshmen, that they could carry the workload, and over time their craft is only going to get better. And with the receivers, I think you will see more of that. There's the trend for QBs staying on later. So just because they're first eligible in 2027, it may well see that they stay to 2028 or 26 into 27. The top receivers still look more like they're going to be 3 and out as long as they've had the game time and the exposure which these guys have got early. So yeah, stack up on those picks in dynasty leagues. Yeah, try and acquire any extras in trades if you can in Devy leagues, because these guys are going to have already gone in the vast majority of cases. But yeah, it's looking like such a rich class, and it is funny how these things kind of come round in terms of, we've had this running back class in 2025. We're still waiting for what it's going to look like next year in 2026 from a dynasty perspective. But 2027 is certainly looking very, very promising at wide receiver. And running back as well. But ultimately, when we're only picking 3 rounds, some of those guys are getting bumped off at the moment for more immediate running backs and this exceptional wide receiver class.
Yeah, and I think that for me, the dovetailing of this class and the trend in the NFL towards shared backfields and committees and plenty of 1A, 1B running backs leading the way makes the wide receivers more valuable. So they are going to be pushed up the draft board. So even your players like Nick Marsh, who's someone who we don't necessarily see eye to eye on, but is certainly someone who has the production profile so far in a freshman year of a top NFL prospect. He is certainly not going to be owned by very many players in Devy because he was kind of off the radar as a 3 or 4 star recruit going to Michigan State, which isn't notorious for producing wide receivers. He has catapulted himself up into that early. That's the 203 in our mock draft, and that is, elevated above all but 2 running backs in the entire Devy sphere for us right now. So it's a very exciting class. It's definitely your opportunity to stockpile 2027 rookie picks and supplemental rookie picks if you're playing Dynasty or you're playing a limited version of Devy. It's your buy window. Go and get these 2027 receivers if you're playing Devy or Campus to Canton, because they're valuable now and their value's going up.
That's it, absolutely. And kind of when you look at these guys, there are also going to be others that emerge. There are going to be others that started to kind of showcase what they could do, who are going to come in as sophomores and kind of make that next step. It's going to be deep. But right now, just the very fact that half of these first round, almost, 5 out of 12 picks in the first round are taken by that class, and even more so that 2 of them are taking those top 2 spots away from even the presumed elite quarterback, just shows how special. Let's talk about those 2. I know we do it a lot, all right, but let's just give those 2 a mention. Like, how special are Jeremiah Smith and Ryan Williams to you?
Oh, they are super special. They are in a separate tier from any other receiver in college right now. I think Jeremiah Smith has the edge over Ryan Williams. I don't think we've discussed previously, you're not going to be able to trade Ryan Williams straight up for Jeremiah Smith, especially after the back end season that Jeremiah Smith had, lighting up the playoffs, sealing the national championship game with that catch at the end of the game against Notre Dame. But Jeremiah Smith has come in to Ohio State in a room that already has Carnell Tate and Emeka Egbuka returning for his senior season, and he still became the alpha guy. He became someone who could demand targets, more receptions, more yards, more touchdowns than any freshman in Ohio State history. Ohio State is a storied program with a long history of wide receiver production. So to do that just shows how special he is. And Ryan Williams doing it in a slightly less spotlighted offense, as Jalen Milroe was running the ball quite a bit, and Alabama weren't necessarily utilizing Ryan Williams all the time, if it's maybe fair to say. But the highlight catches, the highlight reel stuff that he was doing, even in a bit of a disjointed passing attack, was incredible. And you'll have seen more than I of Ryan Williams.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the biggest thing for me when you look at Ryan Williams, despite the slighter for him, he's an absolute burner. The body control is outstanding. But he's not just winning with speed. There's There's real kind of nuance in the kind of get off and break from his routes like at the line. He already shows a really good kind of release package. That it's only going to get better with time and craft and time on task. Um, he's looked at now as the guy, and I think that's probably to me the most impressive thing. Like everyone knew Jeremiah Smith was really damn good, but I also feel like in that offense there was no need for him to be the guy. I feel like the second that Ryan Williams arrived in Tuscaloosa, like the entire program looked at him and went, "Be our leader." And as a 17-year-old, you'll have heard it in the news. He played all of last season at 17 years old. That got reported ad nauseum. Like he really became like the older statesman and the veteran in the room. It was his profile. He was the biggest recruiting pick. Like come on for Ryan Williams. He's one of the reasons that Keelan Russell, who made our mock as a 2028 QB, and an incoming freshman, he's one of the reasons that you know, Keelan Russell chose Alabama the opportunity to play with Ryan Williams and to develop and grow together. That just gives you a flavour of how special the young man is.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. He is someone that his stock absolutely shot through the roof after a couple of games of last season, because you could pick him up at the 106, 107 range probably last season. And now look at that. He's 102. He's above those coveted quarterbacks that we took at 103 and 104, which was Arch Manning and DJ Lagway. Now, Phil, I think we're going to move on from the receivers. We've got plenty of time to talk about these 2027 receivers over the next few years, which is very exciting for us because we'll get to see them so often. But I want to talk about what happens at the 105, because I feel like those top four, in whichever order you want to take, depending on your strategy of taking wide receiver or quarterback first, or possibly the most valuable asset, you could argue was Arch Manning at the 103. But after those four, it feels like there's a bit of a dilemma at pick 105. And you obviously held this pick for us in our mock draft, and you went with another quarterback, Lenoris Sellers out of South Carolina.
Yep.
How do you feel about that pick now? And what would you be doing if you had just the 105?
Yeah, so if I am the owner of the 105, look, there is the clearest, I think, biggest tier break in at any point that the ANC over the course of the 3 rounds. The drop off after those 4 elite talents is massive. And in all honesty, in a real draft, if I'm owning the 105, I'm looking for someone to come up and take it from me. I'm looking for someone to have the person that they really like, and that they really covet, and offering it out there. The reason I took Lenoris Sellers is I think in terms of that next crop, he offers the most upside, and ultimately he has that dual threat, that kind of rushing pedigree. He is incredibly exciting, and if he develops, he could be a fantasy goldmine. What the flip side of that, of course, is we need to see that development. And the 105 is a huge risk, but there is no way that even sitting in the middle of the round, I think he comes back to you. If it's a snake draft, if it's linear, I don't think he makes it back round to you. So sometimes you've just got to pull your punches and go for what you want. Obviously, we weren't going to trade with each other in this. It was more just establishing where we think players lie. And ultimately, yeah, listen, if you can find someone who wants to come up and take someone from that next crop, or someone who is perhaps they're drafted, given that this is a Devy startup. Imagine the person who owns the 105 in the Devy draft went the veteran QB route. Imagine they're sitting on 2 very elder statesmen as their starter and superflex as a result of the startup draft. They may want to come up perhaps and take Drew Aller. You might think the 105 is really hard for Drew Aller, but when you're looking at how every draft can differ, if you've got someone that has 2 very much aging vets, a Matt Stafford and an Aaron Rodgers, say, okay? And they need an immediate shot in the arm for someone they know is going to be coming in 2026. They may be willing to climb that draft and overpay. So I would absolutely be looking at getting out there if I can. Perhaps acquiring an extra second round pick, which is then when I like to shoot my shot at an extra quarterback. We've sort of spoken about that a lot. But yeah, if you're going to stick and pick, for me, I think Lenoris Sellers offers the most growth in terms of what you could potentially sell him for further down the line, or in terms of his actual appeal as a player to keep on your roster.
We're walking in lockstep here, Phil, because I just agree with everything that you said right there. I think at 105, if this is a real draft, and obviously it's not because this is a startup, but if you were adding Devy, say, for the first time into a league that already exists, you've finished your season and you've earned the 105 spot. You've missed out on the playoffs in the NFL. You might have done so by quite a way, or you might have missed out just by one win. You just don't know in that league. The high upside pick here is Lenoris Sellers because quarterbacks are so valuable and dual threat quarterbacks are even more valuable. So I do really like the pick there, but I just don't want to make it myself. Like you say, I don't want to hold that 105 pick. I want to trade up into the top four. I want to trade quite far down because, like we said, we've got that 2027 class of receivers. I'm quite happy taking the last one in the second tier. So whether that's TJ Moore, Cam Coleman, Brant Wesco, Ryan Wingo, that's probably the end of the tier for me. I'd rather have one of those and a second round or even just a third round pick on top. So, but it also feels 105 feels too early to take Carnell Tate, which is the guy that I took at 106. So it really does feel like a dilemma, and one that I think if someone was asking us what to do, I'd be saying to try and get out of that 105 pick.
Yeah, and like I said, I think that is easier done. It seems like quite a strange kind of thing to do in a made up draft like we had. But this is where understanding the dynamics of your league and understanding your league mates and understanding the startup draft from an NFL perspective that would accompany this, looking at those rosters carefully and finding someone with a hole or a potential weakness in their roster, be it at quarterback, be it at wide receiver, and giving them the opportunity, getting in the DMs and saying, so and so's available, and they could be on your roster next year. Do you want to come up and take that spot? And I would be flirting Drew Allen's name out there. I would be flirting, if someone's weak at running back, if someone kind of leaves the running back, and they shouldn't leave the weak running back class after this incoming crop. But if they get that wrong, if they've gone very, very heavy in other positions, and perhaps running back is the last spot on their roster that leaves a bit of juice, I'd be saying like, do you want to come up and take Nick Singleton? Do you want to come up and take Jeremiah Love? They're still available. I'm happy to switch back, And yeah, that would be the way I'm looking to get out of it, by really scouring what your league mates have done in that startup to accompany it.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. I would be looking for a running back needy team and just selling the point that there's only two established guys in this class and you could have one of them.
Absolutely.
Fab. Well, that's what we would do at the 105. But what we did do is pick Lenoris Sellers. We followed that up with Carnell Tate. And then Jeremiah Love came off the board, the first running back, who we have spoken about at length this season because he's grown from a very small blip on our radar into a run the ball through you kind of prospect that we haven't been able to ignore. So we will save some more Jeremiah Love for later in the 2025 season. And Phil, I'm going to ask you for your biggest prove it pick from this draft. So someone that you took or I took that really needs to show something this year to justify being taken that high.
Yeah, okay. So right now, I firmly believe one of the biggest sells or potential sells in Devy is Nika Iamaleava. He got drafted at the 209 in this draft, which I think is probably lower than I think the general kind of public will still take him. I think name value, we'll see him go a little bit higher, but even at the 209, I'm looking at him right now and thinking, you've got some stuff to show us because next year, if things don't go to plan, I could see him getting the Carson Beck treatment. Like, so this time last year, Carson Beck would have been considered one of the top available QBs in his system at Georgia. And if you look at it now, we've completed a startup draft, and through the first 36 picks, he's nowhere to be seen. And if Nico doesn't do the same this year, I could see that happening to his stock and his profile. We know physically he's got the talent. He's got a beautiful arm and a great release, big arm, fast release. But there is some confusion in his development at the moment in terms of his reading of the pocket and the way he's playing and the way he's escaping the pocket. He doesn't seem to know when to. He doesn't know when to hold it and play. He doesn't know when to roll out. It just looks a little bit confused. We know all the traits are there, and if he can put it together this year, he should and could still very much absolutely rip it. But after some spotty play particularly in SEC competition last year, for me, he's a guy who could potentially slip out of this entirely in a year's time.
Yeah, I feel like Nico was playing with too much weight on his shoulders or too much in his own head throughout last season. And we didn't see him playing fluently or playing like he was having fun. He was overthinking every decision, but that made him make the wrong decision quite often and either leave the pocket when he had time and he should have trusted his offensive line, or hold the ball too long. And you could see all of last season how frustrated his receivers certainly were getting, as he just didn't deliver in the way that he probably was in practice. And I think you can hear what all the coaches are saying about him. You can watch tape from practice and he'll look fantastic. It's just about translating that all the time onto the field, because we didn't really get a complete game at any point in a big spot last season. And we need to see that step forward. Otherwise he's going to lose the job at Tennessee. And we've seen what happens to top prospects who can't put it all together on the field in someone like Malachi Nelson, who is now the starting quarterback potentially at UTEP, having been the 5-star recruit at USC. So just a lot for Nico to put together all at once, but he definitely has the full package.
Yeah, totally. And like I said, there were a couple of games where it was really rough watching last year. The Georgia game, where he only went for 167 yards in the air and 24 yards on the ground, no touchdowns. It was a tough watch. He was sacked 5 times by the Georgia defense. Now we know that Georgia defense is much lauded and much heralded. But his longest completion was 17 yards. He couldn't do anything against them. And again, when you look at the fact that half of his touchdowns, like 5 of his touchdowns, came in one game against Mississippi State, that means he went through 7 other SEC games and only managed to score 4 touchdowns in the air. In Josh Heupel's offense, like, that's just got to be better. It's designed for a quarterback to wear it out, 1-2 read, bang, get it out there, and he wasn't able to take advantage of it. So yeah, there's a lot of work to be done. I'm pulling for the kids. Like, what we got to understand is, like, we don't ever want these kids to fail. Like, we want them to hit. I want Nico to hit. I've got him in a couple of places. Like, I would love it for him to step up this year. But we just have to kind of base it on what we see and give that kind of advice for people. And right now, yeah, he is an absolute prove it player.
Yeah, he is. He is. My prove it guy is Justice Haynes, the running back going to Michigan. He has a historically perfect opportunity in an offense that is geared up to run the ball, that is geared up for one guy to take over the backfield. And Justice Haynes has the recruiting pedigree, if not the on-field production in his time at Alabama, to back that up. But obviously injuries really curtailed his impact in Tuscaloosa. This year is going to be a super interesting one in Michigan because all the talk at the moment is about what is going to happen at quarterback, because a certain Bryce Underwood has obviously enrolled with the Wolverines, and many are hoping rather than expecting him to start. And if he does start, he has all the tools to make a huge impact as a freshman. But what every freshman quarterback needs is someone to take the pressure off when he can't make it all happen by himself. And that is the opportunity Justice Haynes has to really be a key piece of a new look Michigan Wolverines offense. And I say new look because Bryce Underwood is the highest recruited quarterback Michigan have had in potentially school history. I would have to double check that. Certainly the most exciting that I have seen in my time watching college football. So Justice Haynes has the opportunity to be the complementary piece to that, but he'll still be an absolute key piece to that offense. And
you would certainly hope so. You would certainly hope so. But obviously, last year, when you look at Michigan, obviously there's a hell of a lot of vacated touches as well, with Donovan Edwards finally leaving Michigan, and then Khalil Mullins going into the league as well. But the way that those two were used, like my biggest fear, and I agree with you completely, Justice Haynes has got a lot to prove. My biggest fear is that he ends up in a situation very similar to what happened to Donovan Edwards last year, where he was expected to be the guy. He was expected to get the touches, and then out of nowhere, Khalil Mullins came in and actually looked the more productive guy. There's a redshirt freshman, Jordan Marshall, who I just wonder, like, could he be the spoiler? And now listen, he is certainly not the upside prospect that Justice Haynes is, and Justice Haynes should certainly go in there with the chance to make that job his own. But we saw what happened last year. That Michigan run the ball a lot. And with a freshman quarterback, there's going to be a lot of handoffs. They're going to ask him to game manage first while he gets his kind of feet under him and gets set up. There's going to be a lot of touches for running backs. And if Justice Haynes doesn't make the most of them early, could we see that Donovan Edwards syndrome again, where he ended up getting ousted pretty much for Khalil Mullins? Could Jordan Marshall look at taking significant touches away, which would hurt Justice Haynes again?
Yeah, it could happen. I think there's going to be plenty of touches to go around in Michigan. So I think Justice Haynes is going to get his touches. But like you say, if he doesn't show that he can be effective and efficient with those touches, then we're in trouble, because that's exactly what happened to Donovan Edwards. He had the touches. He didn't do very much with it. Khalil Mullins came in, had less touches, did more with them, started to earn more yards on the ground, and therefore earned more touches. And we don't want to see that from Justice Haynes. We want to see him take control of the opportunity he's been given and flourish, because there really is an opportunity for him to do that. But we need to see it. That's why he is my prove it pick. On a similar theme, who has slid down the board so far, maybe they're not even on the board, that needs to show something to rise back up?
Yeah, so I've kind of already mentioned it. I've got two. Now, the low hanging fruit is sitting there on the bottom row at the 307 in Evan Stewart. Okay, so he's the first one. Last year, you would have had to pay around the 106, 107 for Evan Stewart, perhaps. And now you can get him a whole 2 rounds later. It didn't work out for him in that offense. He very much played second fiddle to Tez Johnson, Dylan Gabriel's much preferred target. And yeah, we know the talent's there. It might not hold the upside that we thought originally, but I would certainly hope he's got the potential to re-elevate that stock, so to speak. But the one I really want to focus on, again, I've already mentioned, is Carson Beck. Last year, Carson Beck would have been a top Devy pick, given his spot at Georgia. His first year as a starter was good. And I will be looking to take advantage, I think, of a big, big dip in the fact that he is so far off people's radar at the moment. And I just want to touch on this idea of targeting senior transfer quarterbacks who may have already flashed or maybe not quite put it all together yet, but with potential. Now, I don't think Carson Beck has regressed to the state where he is an undraftable prospect. What I think we've realised is right now he wasn't ready to be considered first round quarterback. And I think you've only got to look at where he's landed this year in moving to Miami, and following in the kind of Cam Ward blueprint. Cam Ward didn't get the draft stock evaluation he wanted in 2024, made the move as a senior transfer to head over to Miami and really bolstered his draft stock to the extent where he now looks like a potential 101 in the NFL draft to the Tennessee Titans. Now, I am not saying that Carson Beck's stock can jump that much and will jump that much, but given that he's not even in the first 36 picks at the moment, he's not as bad as the industry seems to think at the moment. And, it's a massive slide, but I also think that at every point someone slides to the point where they become a value. And I will be looking at whether or not I can acquire Carson Beck for cheap this offseason.
Yeah, I think embarrassingly, I called Carson Beck the safest quarterback prospect of the 2025 NFL class, which goes to show that even the safest option is not safe whatsoever and only entrenched me in taking wide receivers, not quarterbacks. But I do really like this pick. I think Carson Beck needs to show a little bit more maturity, probably as a character. I think the NFL does value that quite significantly, and yeah, he certainly has an opportunity to prove that in the Miami offense.
He's going into the perfect spot. He's going into the perfect spot with JoJo Trader another year older. He's got the opportunity there to, they've invested heavily and really changed. Cat and Cam was a big deal to do with that. Like, it changed the trajectory of the program, and Carson Beck could go in and take advantage. And if he can take them one step further, if he can get them into the playoffs, like that will be, a really, really impressive feat that should shoot him back up those boards. And if you think, it's a bit silly to kind of lay all the blame at Georgia's door. Carson Beck certainly got a lot to answer for, but they didn't exactly surround him with a fantastic cast last year after losing Brock Bowers and Ladd McConkey the season previous. Again, he spent a lot of time towards the back end of the season playing beat up, and I just feel like people are overly down on him because it's the cool thing to do at the moment. I think there's a potential for a bounce back there.
Yeah, there definitely is, and there'll be a lot of eyes on Miami. He's certainly not gone away from the television market, so I think we're going to hear and see a lot about Carson Beck in 2025. I've got two 2026 prospects that have dropped down to our third round, who I think both would have been within the first 4 picks 2 years ago of Devy drafts. That is Zachariah Branch, the wide receiver who went in our draft at the 303. He is a Georgia transfer and has the opportunity to start afresh in a premier program. He is a gadgety wide receiver who can make anything happen when he's got the ball in his hands. He can make a defender miss from 2 centimeters away, and it is quite electric to watch. But we haven't seen him put together a true wide receiver package of tape. Like, we haven't really seen him play as a true wide receiver. I'm nervous about how he's going to be utilized in the Georgia offense, and we have waxed on about that before too. I would love to see Zach Branch rise up in these rankings again and be in consideration as a first round, maybe second round startup pick in 2026, but we will have to wait and see. The other guy is Dante Moore, the quarterback who is now projected to be the starter at Oregon, having sat in the waiting wings behind Dylan Gabriel at Oregon. He obviously has some starting experience at UCLA. he had a choppy season, to say the least, where he actually did show us quite a bit of positive development in his opening freshman season, but not enough for him to establish himself as a starter at a premier program, which is clearly what he was looking to do. With the move to Oregon, he was very accepting that he was going to be a backup for a year or to sit on the bench. I really want to see how much he's learned, how he's matured, how he's grown. He's, again, like Carson Beck, gone to a perfect situation for him to put it all together and to bounce back his draft stock, because that Oregon offense is primed for an explosion in 2025 with a huge bucket load of talent at the wide receiver position, at running back, and the coordinators and the coaching is excellent over in Oregon. So I am really intrigued by that pick. I think in most Devy startups, you won't see Dante Moore make the 3-12 because I just think he, again, is a forgotten quarterback right now. So he is my player that I want to see rise back up the board, and he really has the opportunity to do it.
Yeah, it's the perfect landing spot. He's been patient. He's kind of bided his time. And yeah, the bounce back's on. He's another one. He's another one that, outside the realms of a startup draft. If you've got an owner who's been sat on him and waiting to sell, what's the harm in asking the question? Because the difference in value between what you could acquire him for now and if he puts it together this year is going to be huge.
Absolutely. He is a perfect late round dart throw quarterback. If we were doing a startup now, that 3-12 is absolutely what I would be doing. I'd be taking someone like Dante Moore if he was still available. Obviously, in most leagues that have been going a year or two, he's not going to be available in your drafts. But like you say, I'd throw the 301 at Dante Moore owner and see if they'll take it, because the upside is so high for someone that hasn't really done too much wrong. He's just been away from the limelight. So yeah, any third round pick, if I can get Dante Moore for it, I'm doing that.
Yeah, so.
Speaking of trading and speaking of picks, I wanted to have a chat to you, Phil, about the theory of trading up in a Devy draft, or not necessarily in a draft, but trading up for elite assets. And we've spoken about Jeremiah Smith and Ryan Williams, and they're the guys that I want to trade up for. So if you are looking to acquire Jeremiah Smith or Ryan Williams, I want to know what kind of package you're willing to give up in order to acquire these guys. So do you want to take this from a Devy League perspective? So you can attack that with NFL assets, Devy assets, or a combination of the two. And I'll look at what I would offer from a pure NFL point of view for the Devy 101.
So to make sure you get the Devy 101 in your startup, I think it's going to take multiple years of first. Realistically, you're going to want. If I'm the owner of the 101, I'm not going to want to trade back beyond the kind of midpoint of the first round this year. So if you're at the very back end of it, I'm not overly keen. But I think ultimately what you're getting in knowing you're losing Jeremiah Smith is you are losing someone who is potentially already a top 6 dynasty wide receiver. At its kind of, it's a lofty projection, I appreciate, but honestly, tell me that he's not top 10 right now if he walks into the NFL. That's just the world we live in. And knowing that you're giving up that production, even though it's still 2 years away, if we're only tackling it from a Devy draft perspective, well, I want multiple more shots at that same draft class. And if those guys are all going to be gone by the back end of the first, that kind of next tier with your TJ Moores, your Bryant Weskers, well, then, do you know what? You're going to have to give me multiple first round picks. In fact, you'd probably have to give me your draft class this year and something next year as well, at minimum, because what you're giving away is so high in potential that where Jeremiah Smith already sits amongst that NFL kind of tiers, to purely take it from a Devy draft, I think it's almost impossible. I don't think you could convince me to do it. Not without decent NFL trade, mate.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think there's a combination of Devy picks alone that could get this done, because even if you had 4 first-round picks in it's not a startup, so Jeremiah Smith's already gone. If you've got 4 first-round picks, I don't think that's enough. 4 dart throws at the incoming freshman class, as talented as it may be, and we will get to that in the next few weeks. But we've touched on a couple of those players in this draft, so Keelan Russell and the Michigan quarterback who I've already waxed on about, and his name is escaping me. Bryce Underwood. Those 2 guys are in there, but so you could have both of those. I don't think I'm trading Jeremiah Smith for both of those and 2 other first-round picks, even.
This is it. So, like, let's just take. I know we're gonna get on to the kind of incoming freshman class soon, but Decory and Moore, right now, as the minimum spot is in that incoming freshman class, I don't think I would take beyond any of those top 6 2027 wide receivers. And for that reason, when you look at that, you're giving up Jeremiah Smith. There's the potential that you're not, particularly if it's not a startup, you're not going to get that next crop either, because they're going to be heavily picked over. Like, what are you leaving yourself? This is, yeah, I don't think it could be done. I don't think it could be done unless I was in the dire situation where my roster needed a complete overhaul. But even then, now wouldn't be the time to let Jeremiah Smith go, because it's only going to go up.
Yeah, I agree. I think from a pure NFL perspective, I am genuinely, I'm looking at Fantasy Pros Dynasty rankings, and they've got Nico Collins ranked at number 9, Brian Thomas Jr. at number 10, and Saquon Barkley at number 11. Now that's obviously not super flex. That is quarterbacks excluded, but I would genuinely be having the debate as to whether I would be happy to give up any of those players to go and get Jeremiah Smith, even though he's not going to contribute on my team for at least 2 more years. I'd certainly give up Saquon Barkley. I'd definitely give up Devon Achane for Jeremiah Smith. And if I'm not competing, I'd be giving up Nico Collins as well. I think, and actually, I'd be giving up Brian Thomas, because he's had 1 year of excellent production in Jacksonville, but this is kind of a sell high window for him as far as I'm concerned. So yeah, that is how valuable Jeremiah Smith and / Ryan Williams are. So you're gonna have to give up a lot to trade up for those guys. But if you are considering those, feel free to hit us up, and we can help you thrash out those discussions and find out where you are comfortable. What you are comfortable giving up to go and get those guys, and what you're comfortable getting to give up those guys. We'll probably talk you out of it, but yeah, keep hold of those two receivers. Phil, I think we're at the end of tonight's episode.
Yeah, I think so, man. I think it's really good to dig into, and look back at, we were kind of picking on the fly, and going back and forth. So the chance to go back and look at it is really, really useful. I hope everyone's, found it worthwhile.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Make sure you are following us on X at Wildcard Devy, and the whole crew on YouTube and X at Fantasy Wildcard, and we will catch you very, very soon.
Thanks.
See you later.